The plane moved smoothly through the morning sky, sunlight washing over the wings as Flight 709 cruised at 34,000 feet. Passengers chatted softly, some slept, and others scrolled lazily through their phones. Everything about the flight felt normal, quiet, and peaceful. In seat 14A sat a girl no one paid attention to. She kept to herself, wore simple clothes, and stared out the window like she preferred the clouds to people. She wasn't the loud type, not the noticeable type, just a quiet traveler moving from one city to another. But destiny likes quiet people. It tests them the hardest. Inside the cockpit, Captain Harvey was giving the co-pilot a routine briefing when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His hand slipped from the throttle. His breathing turned shallow, and before the co-pilot could react, the captain collapsed onto the floor. The co-pilot shouted his name, shaking him, but the captain didn't respond. Outside, the flight attendants heard the commotion and rushed forward, knocking on the locked cockpit door. Within seconds, the co-pilot's trembling voice came over the PA. Is there anyone on board with flying experience? We need help." The cabin froze. Parents held their children. A man whispered a prayer. Everyone looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would stand up. But no one did, except one girl. Seat 14A rose quietly. The girl hesitated for just a moment, as if fighting with herself, then stepped into the aisle. The flight attendant stared at her, confused. "I can try," the girl said softly. Those 3 words would change the fate of everyone aboard. The crew opened the cockpit door, and for a second the girl didn't move. She looked at the buttons, switches, and displays glowing brightly in the dim space. But instead of confusion, something else filled her eyes. Recognition. She slid into the captain's seat like she had been there before. Her fingers hovered over the controls, steady and sure. The co-pilot watched in shock. "You've flown before?" he asked. She didn't answer directly. "Tell me the engine status, and get me ATC." Her voice was calm, controlled, too controlled for someone who was supposedly just a passenger. The co-pilot complied, still shaking. As he read out the engine data, she already moved the aircraft into stable level flight. Adjusting flaps and trim like instinct guided her. The plane, which had been slightly dipping, steadied immediately. Meanwhile, air traffic control finally answered the emergency call. "Flight 709, confirm situation." The co-pilot hesitated, then pointed to her. "She's flying the plane." The radio went quiet for 2 seconds. Then ATC asked the question that would reveal the truth. "Pilot in command, identify yourself and state your flight experience." The girl looked at the radio with a deep breath, as if she was opening a door she had closed long ago. "This is Shadowbird," she said quietly. The channel went completely silent. Controllers exchanged looks. Shadowbird wasn't a normal name. It wasn't a civilian name. It was a military call sign, one that had vanished from all records years ago. Air traffic control immediately contacted the nearest air defense base. Within minutes, 2 F-22 Raptors were scrambled into the sky. Back on the passenger plane, the crew still didn't know who she was. But they could feel she was different. Her focus was razor sharp. Her breathing never wavered. She checked altitude, fuel, gear pressure, and course inputs with the precision of someone who had thousands of hours behind a stick. The co-pilot finally asked, Who are you?" But she kept her eyes forward. "Just maintain communications. We don't have much time." The captain still lay unconscious behind them, and the plane was heading toward a storm formation. She adjusted the flight path slightly, reducing turbulence. The passengers behind her had no idea that a girl who sat silently minutes earlier was now the only thing keeping them alive. As Flight 709 approached restricted airspace, 2 shadows appeared beside it, sleek and deadly, cutting through the sky like predators, the F-22s. The fighter pilots radioed in. "Flight 709, this is Raptor 1. Identify who is controlling that aircraft." For the first time, the girl hesitated. Then she spoke softly. "Shadowbird, taking command." Inside the F-22 cockpits, both pilots froze. They knew that name. Every elite pilot did. Shadowbird was the youngest prodigy in their program. The one who broke simulation records. The one who could fly anything. But she disappeared from the Air Force years ago without explanation. Now she had returned in a passenger jet with 180 souls depending on her. "Shadowbird," the lead F-22 pilot whispered, almost like speaking to a legend. "We've been looking for you." She didn't answer. Her hands tightened on the controls. Her eyes stayed locked on the horizon. This wasn't the time for reunions or explanations. This was survival. And the storm ahead was getting worse. The storm loomed ahead like a dark wall, stretching from horizon to horizon. Lightning cracked inside the towering clouds, illuminating the sky with violent flashes. Every passenger felt the turbulence shaking the aircraft, but inside the cockpit, the girl, known only by her old call sign, Shadowbird, remained steady. The co-pilot clung to his seat, trying to keep calm, but every shudder of the plane tightened his nerves. "Should we divert?" he asked. Shadowbird scanned the radar, tracing the edges of the storm. "No, if we divert left, we'll face stronger wind shear. Right isn't possible. We'd lose altitude control." Her voice remained controlled. "We go through the narrow break ahead. The F-22s will guide us." Outside, the two F-22 Raptors tightened formation. Their sleek silhouettes glowed through flashes of lightning as they opened a private channel to her. "Shadowbird, stay on our tail vector," the lead pilot said. "We'll give you real-time wind corrections." Another voice, Raptor 2, joined in, softer. "We heard rumors you were gone, but seeing you here on a commercial flight, this doesn't feel real." Shadowbird didn't respond. Her focus was absolute. Every second mattered. The safety of more than 100 passengers depended on her hands. And those hands were steady, too steady for someone who should have been terrified. The plane punched into the first layer of storm clouds. Rain battered the windshield. The cockpit shook violently. Alarms chimed through the panels. Altitude dropping, crosswind increasing. Stall warnings flickered on. Passengers screamed behind the cockpit door. Someone was praying loudly. Another cried for their children. But Shadowbird blocked it all out, her world shrinking to nothing but numbers, angles, and instincts. The co-pilot stared at her awestruck. "You're not just a pilot, are you?" She didn't look away from the controls. "I used to fly," she said quietly, "long ago. But your call sign, Shadowbird, that's from Special Operations Aviation. Isn't it? That's classified." She shifted the throttle gently. "Not anymore." The worst part of the storm slammed into them, violent updrafts. Threw the plane upward, then downward, tossing it like a toy. Overhead compartments burst open, luggage crashing to the floor. The entire aircraft groaned under the pressure. Shadowbird held the control column firmly, countering every violent push with precise corrections. Raptor 1's voice cut in urgently. "Shadowbird, your nose is drifting 3 degrees south. Correct it." "On it," she replied calmly. Raptor 2 added, "Altitude dropping fast. You need to increase thrust." "I know." She pushed the engines harder. The plane climbed back to stability, shaking but not breaking. After another agonizing minute, the worst turbulence faded. And then, suddenly, they broke through. The sunlight exploded across the cockpit as they cleared the storm wall. The clouds fell behind them like a shattered barrier. Gasped the passengers, and for the first time since taking control, Shadowbird allowed herself a small exhale. Raptor 1 spoke almost emotionally. "You've still got it, Shadowbird." But she shook her head. "No, I'm not that pilot anymore." Raptor 2 responded softly. "Maybe not. But today, you were." Below them, the runway of Ridgefield International Airport came into view, stretching long and straight across the earth. ATC cleared them for an emergency landing. Fire trucks lined the sides. Medical teams stood by. The co-pilot looked at her nervously. "You're really going to land this thing?" Shadowbird checked the instruments. Fuel pressure normal. Landing gear ready, runway wind speed decreasing. "Yes," she said. "We're finishing this." She lowered the landing gear. The cabin filled with the heavy clunk of wheels, locking into place. She began the slow descent, adjusting flaps with smooth precision. The passengers held their breath. The co-pilot held onto his headset. The F-22s hovered like guardians, guiding her down with constant updates. "Wind coming from your left side?" "Correct 2 degrees. You're on glide slope." "You're good, Shadowbird." At 500 feet, the aircraft jolted with a sudden gust. The co-pilot panicked. "We're drifting!" "I have it," she said firmly. She corrected the drift, barely moving the controls. Small, perfect adjustments that only a pilot with elite instinct could pull off. The runway rushed toward them. Time slowed. At 50 feet, she flared the nose. At 10 feet, she steadied the wings. At touchdown, thump! The wheels hit the runway. The aircraft bounced once, twice. Then the tires gripped firmly, rolling smoothly across the asphalt. Inside, passengers burst into applause and tears. The cabin crew hugged each other. Some people cried openly, overwhelmed with relief. But Shadowbird didn't celebrate. She simply guided the aircraft to a full stop, cut the engines, and lifted her hands from the controls. For a moment, she stared at those hands she had sworn never to use for flying again. Outside, the F-22s lowered altitude. Raptor 1 whispered on the radio, "Welcome back, Shadowbird." She closed her eyes. That name, a name she once carried proudly and painfully. She clicked off the radio. "That was the last time anyone uses that call sign," she said gently. The cockpit door opened as stunned passengers looked at her like she was a legend. But she only shook her head and walked quietly into the aisle. No victory speech, no dramatic exit, just a quiet girl from seat 14A returning to being no one. As she stepped onto the runway, paramedics rushed past her to help the unconscious captain. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But the quiet girl kept walking, disappearing into the crowd. The F-22 pilots watched from above. Raptor 2 murmured, "She saved everyone," and just walked away. Raptor 1 replied, "That's why she was always the best." And with that, the legend of